CX-5, CX-50, CX-5, CX-50, CX-5, CX-50. We can choose either one as of right now. Of course, there's limited availability on both. However, this has provoked a question across the industry with the CX-50. How much longer will Mazda make the CX-5? That's what we're going to jump into today on this Mazda Crossover update. So, stay tuned.
More car vids. More car vids.
The first 2023 CX-50s that were available to purchase have been hitting dealerships for exactly a month this week. So we have been seeing them all across the country and been very thankful. Everybody, of course, got the Turbo Premium Plus, one of two colors. And it seems like from what I've seen, those dealerships that have received multiples are getting mostly those two colors, Polymetal Gray and Zircon Sand. And of course, we're seeing the upper models, so mostly premiums, premium pluses, and turbo premium pluses. And this is something that we expect to change in the next months coming forward, as some of the inside connections at the plant in Huntsville have said that most of the CX-50s rolling off the lot now do not have the panoramic roof, which means that it would be a preferred or under trim. And remember, here in America, we're going to have 10 total trims when you count the Meridian Edition that is a late release. So thankful for the CX-50, thankful for all this vast different equipment and different options. However, where does this leave the CX-5? Originally, we know that this new nomenclature of and new copyrighted and trademark names all end in a 0. So we started with the CX-30, then of course this new North American only CX-50, then Mazda dropped 5 crossovers including the CX-50 in one day with a CX-60, a CX-70, a CX-80, and a CX-90. And of course, people like me were speculating that the new rear-wheel drive sedan that was pushed off a little bit would have been named the Mazda 60. Again, bringing back the zeros. So what about the CX-5? Is it going to be left dangling in the wind with no meat, no zero behind it, just the old CX-5? Or is it going to travel the path of the CX-3 and 1, 2, 3 years later just off to the wild blue yonder? That's a conversation that seems to be pretty popular in the last week or so across the industry. We start with an article from Automotive News that basically says with the CX-50, that means curtains for the CX-5. Now, in this Automotive News article, they quote Ed Kim from Auto Pacific, who says, in fact, that the CX-5 will be gone in 2 years. Also, along the same lines there, Ivan Drury from Edmunds says that he pictures the CX-5 lasting all of 3 years and being bye-bye. And they also cite the CX-3, CX-30 comparison. However, before we get too deep into this, let me just state two numbers for you. The first one is 168,000. The second one is 65,000. Of course, you know the 168,000 is the number of CX-5s that were sold in this country, in the United States of America, last year, in all of 2021. And the CX-5 has consistently sold over 120 to 150,000 since 2016. That second number, 65,000, is the predicted total number produced CX-50 sales, or excuse me, vehicles this year. However, I expect that 65,000 to also be shared with our neighbors to the north in Canada and our neighbors to the south in Mazda de Mexico. So how many actual CX-50s will we see in this country? We're not sure. How many actual retail sales will we see in this country? We're not sure. Now, of course, you know from talking on the channel here that the plant in Huntsville is designed to, on Mazda's portion, produce 150,000 vehicles. Of course, out of that 150,000, we will be sharing the CX-50 with our neighbors to the north and our neighbors to the south. So we really don't know how much of that 150,000, once labor, the number of employees and personnel gets substantial enough, and the parts availability, chips availability gets substantial enough to produce 150,000. We don't know what the U.S. share will be. However, Mazda has decided to go from the 300,000, give or take, 350 actually, if we're talking about last year, to 450 to potentially 500,000 in the U.S. So I would say that in Mazda's prospective plans, that a majority of that 150,000 plays a major role into that growth over the next 2 or 3 years. Also, we are going to see the CX-70 and CX-90 that will participate in that. Will there be some cross-shopping between the CX-5, the CX-50, the CX-70, and the CX-90? Yes, absolutely there will be. However, I think that Mazda's finally decided to grow up, to increase its numbers. And you cannot increase its numbers without the CX-5 or the CX-50 or the 70 or the 90 here in the U.S. Also, Car and Driver says the CX-50 is more expensive, so that could be another determining factor on why the CX-5 will stay around. Of course, if you're talking about standard 2.5S to 2.5S, there's really around a $500 price difference. However, like we've seen thus far, how many 2.5S or 2.5S selects will we actually see of the CX-50? We don't know. So there could be quite a substantial price difference. And I know many of you on the channel have voiced your concern once you've seen the CX-50, that a $43,000 price point or higher based on market demand and availability, $43,000, it's missing some components that you like on the Turbo Signature CX-5 or the CX-5 in general. CarBuzz says, in fact, that the CX-50 may kill the CX-5 and cites some of the same quotes from Ed Kim and Ivan Drury that Automotive News had shared earlier. Will Mazda continue making the CX-5? Yes! There is no growth of Mazda sales in this country without the CX-5. And I, just like Mazda, agree that the CX-5 and the CX-50 do speak to some similar customers like myself, but also they speak to two different sets of clients and drivers because of how premium the CX-5 is and how more recreational off-road, less premium, if I'm going to say that, the CX-50 is. So if we want growth, we have to have more options to target more drivers. CX-5, yes. CX-50, yes. More Mazdas, yes. That's all I have on this edition of the Mazda Crossover Update. If you have any questions or comments, yes, no on the CX-5, go ahead and drop them below. That's my opinion, and I think the CX-5 is a vital role to continued growth. And I think Mazda is really wanting to play ball in the big leagues with the big boys as we see growth projections for the next several years. I'll be here on the boulevard reading and listening for any more Mazda news and Mazda Crossover news, and I'll see you on the next one.
More garbage.